Hello, Dr. Hargrove. So the topics we're going to be discussing in this video is association versus assimilation and how the French and the British played a role in that. So the first one I'll be talking about is British indirect rule, which is mainly affiliated with association because Africans were not meant to be full British citizens with full legal and political rights. They were just subjects to be ruled apart from England. So Frederick Lugard, which was the former governor of Nigeria, he was one of the theorists related with indirect rule, and basically indirect rule was more of a step back stance to colonialism. The British Empire, they sent officers to start these colonies after the Berlin Conference in it, and they were trying to figure out how to govern. So the British figured that it would be less resistance with the local population if they had a more softer approach to colonialism. They used customary law, which was when the local chiefs could still have power in terms of local ceremonies, settling local civil disputes, or minor criminal cases. And this was done not because the British had respect for Africans, because they felt like orders and things would be more followed if it came from a local chief as opposed to a British officer. And this was also a cheaper way for England to rule African colonies, as they did not have to send administrators there to. It was cheaper because you didn't have to send people there to set up roads, pay the administrators to be there or whatever. And another way that the British ruled Africans was by divide and conquer, which basically means that before Europeans showed up, there was a difference between local African nations, but it was not as prominent as the Europeans made it. For them to pit different groups against one another and create rivalries, they made distinctions in clothing, language, dialects, even though before some of these African nations still got along. And as far as the French, they use more of direct rule. And at first, when the French arrived in nations like Senegal, they wanted the African population there to completely assimilate, like adopt the French language, change their clothing, stop certain practices associated with their religion, such as polygamy. There was no religious dancing. And if these Africans assimilated, they would have full French legal and political rights. They would have be represented in the French Parliament. And so after a while, the goal shifted from the French from assimilation towards association. This was done to fix some of the problems that were associated with assimilation. The French basically felt like the Africans were having too much power in their government, as if you might say. So with association, the Africans were still expected to adopt French policies and everything like that, but they weren't forced to. They weren't first forced to, and what else? And also the French used the divide and conquer as well, but it was more prominent with the French because once they stopped wanting all the Africans to assimilate and just basically associate, that was more related to the British as in taking a step back from colonialism. So that is really the gist of association and assimilation. Thank you.